is she?
And welcome in to episode 22 here of the Grind on Sports. I'm Wayne Kaiser alongside my teammate, the one and only Ben Metz. And to my left, maybe you're right, would be the voice of the Maryville Scots, Heath Dunkel. He has a lot of other titles. He is the proprietor and owner of Two Hop Sports. He's also part of the Alcoa football broadcast there in the fall. But Mr. Heath, a lot of different hats, but here we're going to talk about your story. How's it going, man?
Good, man. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good. I know you're a busy man. If you follow you on social media, we know you're a busy man, but a lot going on there. And kind of background a little bit on what we're doing here is, especially in the media realm, I don't know that anybody gets you don't see many 30 for 30s on media guys. You don't see the story of how they got where they got. And I think ultimately that's a cool story for whatever that is. If it's a sport, if it's a media member, if it's, honestly, teachers and any walk of life, people don't get places by happenstance or accident. And so I kind of like to expose that a little bit, what opportunities, what breaks went your way to get you to where you are with Maryville College and also Alcoa, the 8-time defending state champion. So big time record there for them. But we'll just kick it off. Again, we can start as early. We probably don't need any toddler stories, but we can start as early as you want to, man, with your story there, and just let's take it from the top. Where did the broadcasting thing start for Mr. Heath Dunkel?
Yeah, so I think for a long time, Wayne, growing up as a kid, and I'm sure many kids kind of operate the same way that are in sports. The goal was to play professionally in one of them, whether that be football or basketball or baseball. Those are really kind of my three main sports. I did some other stuff with track as well, but kind of focused on those three. And as I got older, starting to figure out a little bit more where my direction took me. But right before my junior year of high school, I switched positions to wide receiver. I had previously been a quarterback, and I wanted to give wide receiver a try. And went to the University of Texas football camp right after they had won the national championship. And so got to take a picture with Mac Brown and the national championship trophy, which was a really cool experience. But also that trip and that camp was a pretty humbling experience as well, as all of the athletes around me were way better than I was. And I got a rude awakening that professional football was not in my future. And so it motivated me to work harder at the high school level, to continue to bring that work ethic that I learned at that camp back with me to Heritage High School, where I played for the Mountaineers. But eventually had to kind of determine what that next step was after high school. And so as I got near the end of my senior year, there was maybe a few small opportunities looking at NAIA, maybe Division III, if I wanted to try to go somewhere and play football. But ultimately, I knew that wasn't going to be a career. And so trying to make a decision on what that next step was. And so decided if I couldn't play sports, I'd love to talk about them. So went to UT. At the University of Tennessee, got a degree in journalism and electronic media with an emphasis on broadcasting, and started to truly kind of develop my skills at the collegiate level, but was able to do broadcasting at that point in time early in that career, as you know, starting to really get into the high school realm of broadcasting with different teams in Blount County.
So Heath, one thing you left off about your college career, because I think this is a pretty cool thing. So you weren't a one-trick pony. It wasn't just journalism. You were also you got a little voice on you, don't you? You were in the singers, right?
I was. So I was in Heritage Singers in high school, and it's kind of funny how that worked out. So I was in the band and played football in middle school, and wanted to be on the drum line at Heritage and also play football. But unfortunately, being able to do both wasn't really an option at Heritage at the time. Coach really wanted us to focus on football. And so my homeroom teacher happened to be the choir director. And one of my friends told him that I could sing. And he said, "You can? Well, you should join men's choir." And I said, I'm okay. I don't think so. That's not for me. And he said, no, you really should. You should join men's choir. Just give it a shot. And I said, no, I'm okay. And he said, I tell you what,
I'm okay.
if you take men's choir, you don't have to take art class. And I said, okay, well, I guess I'm signing up for men's choir this year. So I signed up for men's choir, fell in love with music, singing wise. I'd already obviously loved it playing the drums, but I fell in love with it and got to really enhance my voice. And I think that's where also I kind of grew as a broadcaster, just in building my voice and getting stronger and learning the importance of taking care of it as well as a musician. And so learned that through Heritage. And then as I was kind of figuring out that next step in college, I would go to not only for broadcasting, I got an opportunity as one of our student teachers at Heritage was in the University of Tennessee Singers, which was a jazz ensemble. And he went to his choir director and they reached out and I had an audition. And next thing I knew, I was in the University of Tennessee Singers. So I got to college and got to do that. It was pretty busy time in my life, from work at serving tables to school to Tennessee Singers and broadcasting. And then on top of that, also, I loved choir so much, I got heavily involved in it through college. So most semesters I was actually in 3 choral groups. So I was in the Tennessee Singers, I was in men's choir, and also one of the founding members of the Tennessee Men's A Cappella Group Volume, a play on words, if you will. And I was the vocal percussionist, or as some of us like to call it, the beatboxer for the group.
So you guys were pentatonics before pentatonics.
I think it was probably around close to the same time. The sing-off was kind of going on through college. But, we wanted to give it a shot, and we asked our choir director at the time, who was new at Tennessee my freshman year, if we could try it. And so he held auditions. And honestly, at the time, I thought maybe I could do a little bit of beatboxing, but I didn't really know exactly what I was capable of. And so just kind of gave it a whirl and ended up developing it pretty quickly and kind of became the beatboxer for the group as time went on, like full time. Originally, it was 2 of us. And then after that first semester, he kind of dropped off and I stayed with the group.
Ben, I don't know that there's anything he can't do, Ben. I don't know.
Now, Heath, man, we're so fortunate to have you on the show this week. Wayne told me that you were going to be on Monday, and I said, man, a fellow color guy is going to be on. And one of my favorite experiences of this past football season, all kidding aside, was just talking with you before the Maryville-Alcoa game. Just a guy who really passionate about what you do, and I really enjoyed our conversation before the game, and look forward to working with you this year. But getting to my question, when you were a kid, because I did this when I was a kid. I'm curious if you did, but I would be in the living room calling games. So my mom would kind of catch me like calling a game or saying this player's about to do this and doing a full analysis of a video game or something like that. Did you ever do anything like that growing up?
Yeah, I did. It was a little bit more when my brother was playing video games and it was my turn to wait and let him play a little bit on the NCAA football. But also, I think I just always found the announcers fascinating in those football games. I remember one with the voice of Keith Jackson, and that was I remember playing that when I was real little, and I just always, every time it got to that intro, I remember just starting to mimic him, like, "Good afternoon, I'm Keith Jackson," and I would just like enjoy listening to how he did it. And little did I know at the time that maybe that was something later on I'd want to do, but I just enjoyed it. And then when my brother and I would play Madden, and sometimes he was playing, I would just sit there and pretend I was broadcasting his game and just kind of have fun with it. So yeah, it's something I'd say over time that developed. And I mean, I remember even, I don't know about you guys, but I used to love Monday Night Football when they had that really cool intro growing up with Hank Williams Jr. and all the different ones they would create each week. And so right before I went to bed on those nights for school nights, I would beg my parents and they would let me every Monday night stay up and watch the intro before I went to bed because I just wanted to hear what he did. So maybe that was not just the sports junkie, but the music junkie in me as well, the choir nerd, if you will. But I just loved that stuff.
I'm with you, man. This is Keith Jackson of ABC College Football here today.
Right? Loved listening to him and John Madden and Al Michaels together were really fun on Monday Night Football together. And, now I really love listening to Kirk Herbstreit. He's one of the guys I could just really listen to his broadcasts all day. Yeah.
And it's funny, of course, being in Tennessee, I think John Ward's always going to be a storyteller that people look to, but it's amazing how he almost made it real for people. He kind of he told things in a story that we understood. There wasn't, I think sometimes, and I won't name any broadcasters because there's enough of them that they like to use really big football words. That, in my opinion, a lot of everybody doesn't have a degree in NFL football. You know what I'm saying? And so when they use like this route name that, yes, if you are in that circle, that makes sense. But I feel like certain ones like Keith Jackson, John Ward, and even some new guys, they say it in a way that, people understand it. So I think that's always intriguing when you're like, I can maybe do that. I could, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's a really cool story. But sorry to sidetrack you there, but I thought that was a cool thing because, again, I think everything builds what develops, right? Should you have not been a singer in high school and made that kind of jump, how would the voice have held up? Would you have been able to do full football games like almost immediately? Things like that kind of change the dynamic, right? So anyway, you're in college, you've got your degree. One, did you ever call any University of Tennessee sports at all?
Not officially. I had one sports broadcasting class where we were required to go to a sporting event during that season and record ourselves broadcasting. So we would get to sit in the media section and do that. They typically wanted us to be with a partner and do it together. The problem was with my UT Singer schedule, my schedule didn't match up with anyone in my class, so I had to do it by myself. And so I went to two Lady Vols games when the great Pat Summitt was still there, and got to sit on media row and just had a recorder and sat there and recorded my broadcast, and then got to go after to when they did the Q&A with the coaches and the players, and got to experience that and interview some of them, and then would turn that into the teacher and have him review it and critique it.
So when you were in college, journalism, electronic media, the broadcasting kind of concentration, when, because in college, I feel like it's a road, right? Like you're traveling on it. Because I started college as an elementary teacher, like an elementary education major, and I ended with organizational management. Common Core may have had a couple different punches to do with that, but I digress. But was there any time in your time in college that either you were like, maybe journalism isn't my jam, or maybe broadcasting isn't my jam, or I guess, was there a time where you just said, yep, I'm where I need to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think questioning ourselves at time is kind of normal. I think a lot of people do that. And I think going through college, you're trying to really figure out who you are. You get out of high school and, you kind of been under the parents' umbrella, and now you get into college and are really just trying to figure out yourself and how you kind of fit into the puzzle of the world. And so I think for me, there was certainly a lot of that. I think going through, one of the things I found when I went is that a majority of the classes focused on journalism versus broadcasting. And what I had anticipated was going to be a lot of broadcasting, and instead it was a lot of writing and going to government board meetings and writing stories and doing things like that it really wasn't my passion. I knew that. And so I think I did question throughout college, well, am I making the right moves? Am I doing the right things? Is this going to be a field that I'm not going to be able to crack? Because what we learned through college as we got older and older throughout the years is that you kind of had to be a reporter or a journalist before you could really kind of work your way up into maybe that ESPN Sports Center broadcaster type of role. And what really got popular as well during my college years was former athletes becoming broadcasters. So not only were people taking a long time to climb the ladder, if you will, and become a broadcaster, but now athletes were taking those positions as well. And so I think that I was definitely questioning myself and wondering, well, man, like, this has gotten even harder. Is this going to be the right path for me? And, God works in mysterious ways, and it's not my full-time job. I do have a full-time job outside of broadcasting, but I've been really blessed with the opportunity to be able to still live out my passion as much as possible.
Yeah, we call that daytime job. That's your daily grind.
Right.
Then you got the evening grinds with the projects. But Heath, so obviously you get through college, you're kind of getting into the workforce, doing different things. What was kind of the big break that got you on the field, in the press box? What got you into actually doing the deed in broadcasting?
Yeah, so throughout college, I was broadcasting high school sports. So that was one of those things where after the Heritage football season, my senior year of high school, we obviously didn't make the playoffs. I was telling my guidance counselor, I really want to go into broadcasting. I want to be a sports broadcaster. And it just so happened that her fiance and some of his buddies had just started a radio team covering high school football in the fall, and they were going through their very first season of doing it and having a lot of fun. And it was just a bunch of friends, including Marty Millsaps, one of our dear friends of the program that we know, and some of his friends from a local newspaper that used to be out here called The Blunt Today. And so they were doing that together. And she said, let me get in touch with them and see if they need any help. So they got in touch with them. And during that time, I got to join them the last couple games of the playoffs and kind of be a stats guy and do stats on my computer. And the first couple of times I would try to write it down very quickly on a piece of paper, try to put it together for them. And I quickly learned that was really hard to do, and I couldn't keep up. And so funny enough, your parents always tell you that too much time on the video games is going to hurt your brain or hurt your eyes. But I like to believe that it was actually a really big help for me because what I did is I went back to my NCAA football game and said, what are the most important stats that NCAA keeps up with? And I'm going to translate that into a system on Excel. And so I looked at that and created my own stat system on Excel, and helped me keep a much better job of staying on top of the stats throughout the ball game. And I would able to come on the pregame show for the first few years where I would give my prediction, talk about each team, and I would reach out to the ADs that week. I would have them send me stats. I would have them send me rosters. And I would kind of do all the grunt work, if you will, for the team. And then I would come on at halftime, talk about stats, give them a brief analysis of what I thought happened in the game and what I thought needed to happen for both teams to be successful moving into the second half. And then I would come on and do my post-game stats as well. And so first couple of years I got to do that. And midway through college, ESPN Radio came calling and wanted to cover what we were doing. And they decided they wanted to cover two different schools. And so they covered Alcoa and William Blount. And at the time, Marty let me venture off, and I called William Blount for a year and had a broadcaster broadcast with me. And I got to do play-by-play and really grow during that year. I think it was maybe my junior year of college. And so I got to do that. And around that same time, kind of weaving it all together, Eric Etchison from Maryville College had reached out to me because I had done an internship with them and asked if I was interested in PA announcing some soccer because they needed some help with that. So I said, well, sure. I've never PA announced soccer before, but why not? So I started doing that around that time and started building that relationship then with the Scots. And so after that year, ESPN Radio Knoxville disbanded and left. And so we came back together and just decided to cover primarily Alcoa because 2 years prior to that, it was kind of just the game of the week, and we would bounce around to different high schools in Blount County. But they had done Alcoa solely the year before, wanted to keep that train rolling. And so I came back over. The color commentary guy decided he didn't want to do it anymore because he wanted to focus on his kids. And so I got to just slide into that role. And Marty and I have really been doing that ever since. And so that's kind of where we've gotten to grow with Alcoa and build some great relationships in the community because we've been broadcasting for them, I'd say, over 10 years now. But Maryville College, in my latter college years was where I did PA announcing, and then I slowly started moving into some other broadcasting roles there.
And so at the high school ranks, I always say, some of the way I got into broadcasting, podcasting, radio, all the different things, really, I didn't know. Nobody gave me a book on how to get into doing anything. You just kind of trial and error, figure it out, kind of like the stat situation with you. But how much do you think that's helped you kind of as you've went through? And obviously you're still a very young guy, but how much has it prepared you for situations while you've been broadcasting to where maybe you have to do a less prepared situation, but you're still able to make a good show out of it?
Man, I tell you, high school football has really prepared me just to be able to learn how to adjust on the fly. Just in life in general, I would say, with work and other things I do, and how to stay calm under pressure. Because there's a lot of times, especially at that level, where maybe the equipment you're working with, it could be great one week and it could be faulty the next week, and you got to figure it out. And
Sure.
you've got a fan base maybe who's preparing to listen to you, and you've been hyping up the game all week, and now it's not working, and you've got 10 minutes before kickoff, and you've got to figure it out, and you've got to call the engineer and talk to them about what's going on. And some people don't handle that well, and others can stay a little bit cooler under pressure. And I try to pride myself in staying as calm as possible, because I think losing your temper is just going to cause you to panic and cause you to really kind of lose sight of what you're doing, and sometimes mess things up further. And so I think that's important. And I think it's taught me a lot just in life is, sometimes life's going to throw you curveballs, and it may be a really quick thing that you've got to pivot from. And I think high school's really helped with that. And I think over the years as well, excuse me, when we travel on away games now, I've probably got more things in my car than I need to have, but I am ready for almost anything. And a lot of times, if it's a decent drive away from my house or anything like that, I'm probably also going to leave extremely early to get there, and I'm going to know what things are near there. So if I need to go to Lowe's, or need to go to the dollar store, or I need to go, I need to go get food, like, we are prepared. Because, back in the day, early on in my broadcasting career, not that I'm that old, but, when I say that, but early on in the broadcasting career, almost every game you'd go to, they'd feed you. And so you could expect, hey, there'd be a pregame meal, and I'd be ready to rock and roll. But now a lot of places don't do that. And COVID, I think, has some to play into that. And then other things is just in regards to getting sponsorships, because everyone's looking for help, with different things, whether it be Girl Scout cookies or some other fundraiser. And so it's hard for everyone to be able to give up their money and their time to help you, and maybe even give out all the food. So you find a lot more now that most places don't have pregame meals. And so that's another reason on away games I like to get there early, because I want to get there, I want to set up, I want to make sure it's working, and then that gives me time to go somewhere nearby, grab a quick bite to eat, and probably bring it back, and then just sit there and kind of take it in, because I love nothing more than to get to a game early, set up, and have time to just sit back and just think about the game, and just kind of let it sink in about what's going on. What have I studied this week? What's the field look like? What's the energy look like? What are some of the people I've met, and what have they talked to me about this team that I can really maybe use at some point in the broadcast? So it gives me time to kind of reflect and really prepare as well.
So Heath, I got to ask you this question. You brought up all the additional equipment you bring, and me working with Wayne. This made me think about this question. How many feet of extension cord do you take on a road game? I know Wayne is a plus 50 guy. Like, are you a sub 50 or plus 50 or?
And the only reason we know how much I take, Heath, is because we used every yard of it one time. It was worth taking.
Yeah. So I would say I probably lean plus 50 as well. And the reason I would say that is because of one game, and one game alone that I'll never forget, is 2 years ago when Alcoa played West, and we traveled to West, and it was a crazy game. Alcoa won in overtime, but what a wild game. And we got to West, and we were supposed to originally be in the press box. Well, it just so happened to be a Thursday night game. Rivalry Thursday was coming to cover it on television, and also the Sports Animal was coming to cover it. So it was going to be a really big game with a lot of media coverage. And unfortunately, we were the odd man out. And so we got there, and they said, well, you're now going to be on the visitor side in the stands. And, there is electricity on the light pole nearby. And I thought, okay, cool. It'll be right next to the stands. I'll be able to hook it right up. I brought a tent with me to give us cover, because they were calling for rain. So I was trying to prepare there. We even bought some of those walls you put on your tent on the sides, and Velcro it to the sides to protect us from the wind and the rain. And we went and bought some of those that week, preparing, like you have to do for the game. And I got there with all my equipment and my tent and the walls, and I thought I was 100% ready to go. And luckily, my brother was still on his way because we all got there, and we were about an hour and a half, 2 hours early. Again, we wanted to be there and prepare. But we found that almost 50 feet away was the light pole that had the electricity. And so we were like, we don't have any cords that stretch that far. So I immediately had to call my brother, and he drove to a hardware store and got one for us and brought it. And we plugged it in, and it worked, thank goodness. And we were praying the whole game that no one messed with it, because it was just like this long string going up to the top of the press box. And we were just like, please, no one pull the plug. Like, please let us have a full broadcast. And luckily we did, but it was a little scary.
So Heath, you want to know where the game I used every foot yard of cord that I had was?
Based on our conversations, I'm going to guess PAL.
Knox West.
Oh, okay.
Knox West.
Same thing?
So not the same scenario on why they just immediately put us over there. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But we did the same thing, had a tent, the whole deal. But again, I roll heavy. And so we literally, it was probably, I don't even think it was one whole cord. I think it was either 2 or 3 cables put together. And when we met them, we tied it in a knot and then plugged it in, so that because there were kids playing there all night.
Yeah.
And so if they tripped on on our cord, they wouldn't immediately pull it out. But anyway, yeah. So no disrespect to Knox West, but they could extend power cords. But anyway.
They certainly could.
So Heath, yeah. So learning how to adapt. That's something that high school broadcasting. I think any affiliation, whether it's the snack parent of the football team, the uniform guy, or the radio crew, you got to be able to be versatile to what you got, the surroundings you had. We've been put on top of Powell High School with hornets the size of chihuahuas. I mean, we've had it all. But made it through it unscathed. But you talked about doing Alcoa for multiple years as a broadcaster. I think anybody can point to a state championship game or what have you. But as a broadcaster, was there any time in that when you just kind of lost it for a minute and kind of became a fan? And what kind of game was that? And kind of give us a little story run back.
Well, not to pour any salt on the wound, you two. But
as I was asking the question, I was like, I got it.
But
can it be 18s instead of like?
I mean, there's been a lot of fun moments and a lot of cool things that I've seen over the years, I would say, from broadcasting at different venues. I'll just share a couple with you, and then I'll kind of go into my favorite that you just talked about. But some of it's not even about the game; it's just about the people. When I think about Kingston, Kingston High School is probably one of my favorite places to go call a game at, and it's just because the people are so good to you. They're extremely nice. They get you whatever you need. I'll tell you what, my first time there, talking about pregame meals, walked in and they had barbecue and chicken all across the back table. And then at halftime, they brought us from next door Sonic Blasts. And they just brought in a ton of them and was like, all right, who wants Oreo? Who wants M&M? And they were like just passing them around. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, I probably needed to go on a run and do a weight workout afterwards, because I ate a lot. But it was really cool. But it's not just about the food. I mean, anytime I reach out to them, they've always been super hospitable and helpful and got us whatever we've asked for. They've always made sure we had enough room in the booth. And sometimes you guys, I'm sure, know there's places where you got plenty of room and there's places where you got to make it work. And maybe there's one seat, maybe there's two if you're lucky, but it's going to be a tight squeeze. And if you bring anybody else, which typically I know you guys do and we do as well, we've got to figure out what to do with those people, whether it's putting them outside, unfortunately, or having them stand behind us, or maybe one of us stands and deals with the broadcast that way. But Kingston was so great to work with, and I believe they're back in our region this year, so I'm excited to be able to do stuff with them again. This year they're at our place, but I think we'll obviously go to them next year, and that'll be fun. Webb High School, their press box is really cool because the glass goes across all the way and on the sides. so you can see every angle. So if the guy keeps running, you don't miss the shot, you don't miss the call because you can see it. So they have glass on the sides of their windows and all the way across, and it's an open press box. So there's not like doors or walls, so you can see everything. And they actually have a broadcasting program or a media program. So they had behind us students that were calling the game, students on the field that were doing sideline reporting. It was legit. And then Dobbins Bennett, you get to take an elevator up with a media pass and fill all official.
Yeah,
it's a pretty cool place. And so, but again, now I have to dig it in a little bit, and I apologize. But last year, the Maryville Alcoa game, and it's always a fun game. It's literally my favorite game of the year just because the rivalry and the passion and the people and the stories. There's so much to it, good or bad, for Alcoa-Maryville. It's just fun. And last year, I did become a fan. Near the end of that ball game, Jordan Harris picked off the ball and took it off. And when he did that, it was kind of the, old NBA Jam nail in the coffin. And I saw him take off. And funny enough, my girlfriend's friend was just so happened at the time was sitting below us and decided to record me and us broadcasting for a minute. And it was just perfect timing that she decided, because all of a sudden you just see me go, go, go. And I'm screaming in the broadcast, like, go, go, and just screaming. And I'm just locked in on Jordan. Right. And it was funny. I talked to the coaches after the game, and he said, yeah, when you originally started, I was like, no, don't go, get down, because he was afraid he was going to lose the ball. And he said, and about midway through, I knew he wasn't going to be touched. And so I was with you going, go, go, go. And so later, after the ball game, they sent us the video, and I got to watch kind of my experience from a different viewpoint. And, that was where truly, I was a fan as well. And so, a series that, again, has gone back since about 1927 that Maryville has dominated and done a fantastic job with. And so it meant a lot for us and for the community, but it was a really cool game.
Yeah. It's funny, I didn't grow up in this area. I am an assimilated rebel. That's what I tell people, but I'll say this, anybody who asks me, they're like, how's the Maryville Alcoa rivalry? Now, granted, that would not be on my highlight of my broadcasting time, but I understand where you're at. But I tell people all the time, if Maryville Alcoa in high school football, it doesn't get any bigger. And I said, if that doesn't fire you up, if Maryville Alcoa doesn't fire you up, then your wood must be wet, because it's one of those situations to where it's all week, that very game week. And then it's 364 days for the other team to just, you can say what you want, but that night was ours or was yours or whatever that looks like. And so working at our daily grind, really all four high schools are represented, but that week hits a little different. And so, yeah, absolutely. Great environment. Honestly, I had people that had never seen Maryville play and never heard me broadcast, and I had them at that game. Just timing and scheduling worked out. And at the end of the thing, I was upset we lost, and, it is what it is. But I was like, I don't know that you could have seen a better football game. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, Maryville's driving. If they make something happen, then that's it's a push there at the end to see what happens. But anyway, great memory. Either way, unbelievable football game there. But so high school football has really kind of molded you to where you're at. You have a lot of tools in your tool belt based on what Alcoa and your high school broadcasting has done for you. But tell us how the Maryville College thing, you talked about starting as a PA guy, but now you are – I think there's other people that do some broadcasting at Maryville College, but in general, you're the voice of the Scots. And so how do you get from part-time PA to the voice of the Scots?
I'd say the man upstairs first and foremost. I mean, really finding some favor with him, and I appreciate that, a lot. But I would say as well, just the relationships and the people and the things you do, and being patient. That's hard. When I first got there, I think there was this thought of, well, maybe if I do this really well, maybe the next couple of years I'll be able to be the guy. But it took a little longer than that. So I started off doing soccer PA for men's and women's soccer, and in spring I got to do some softball PA. Then the following year, Greg Judkins, who's really the main PA, not only for the Maryville Rebels, but for the Maryville College Scots, and does a phenomenal job. He's a great guy. Had more time to be able to do softball again, so I moved back for a year or two, just doing primarily soccer again. The broadcaster at the time that covered most of the main sports, if he was ever sick, I would be able to get an opportunity here and there to be able to fill in, whether it was a football game or a basketball game. And then I'd say about 4 or 5 years in, they decided to give me the reins of women's basketball. And so that was the first sport at Maryville College. I really became a broadcaster at the collegiate level. Before that, I'd say the year before that, the women had made the NCAA tournament and got to host the first and second round of the Division III tournament. And they called me maybe a couple days before and said, "Hey, our broadcaster's sick. Would you be interested in calling the game?" And I was like, absolutely. Like, what do I have to do? And so, so it was a unique experience. I dressed up really nice, wanted to really look the part because you're calling an NCAA like tournament game. Got my media pass that had that on there, and I still have that. Probably in here somewhere hanging up. And so got to call that game by myself, and it was a lot of fun. And I actually called, I think, a couple games because I called ours, and I think I may have called the one after and then called the following day as well. But then I believe the next year or so is when I was able to become the women's full-time broadcaster. And at that time, I was allowed to pick a broadcast partner of who I wanted to do it with. And Marty Millsaps and I do it at the high school level, and we're a great team. And I think we've really grown closer and closer each year and gotten more and more comfortable with our style and how we operate together as a broadcast team, and knowing kind of how to play off of each other. But at the college level, I thought, this is the first time I've ever really kind of gotten to think about who I want to do this with. And Marty's a pretty busy guy. And so I thought, well, he may not have time to do this. Who else can I do it with? And, funny enough, the more I thought about it, the more I just kept coming back to my dad. And he is not he's not a broadcaster, if you will, and that's not really his passion. But to be able to have conversation with him, and we talk sports all the time, I thought it would be a really cool treat and a unique fit. And I thought we'd give it a go. And my dad has taken over that role and really done a great job of it. And I think we balance each other really well, not just because we're father and son and we know each other, but he's much more technical. So he can tell you what the ref is calling, why they're calling it, what the rule is, where I'm going to be more of the energy. And so I'm going to bring that energy, but then if there's something I don't understand, he's going to be able to step in and kind of really explain that in detail. And not only that, but I think just watching his growth, not only as our stats guy for high school football, but as the broadcaster with me at Maryville College, he takes it seriously, and I appreciate that. When he gets in chat forums and asks Excel questions and looks up NCAA and high school stats and how people would actually do it the correct way, or if this happens in the game, what's that stat, or do they use rushing yards, or what does that look like? And he knows. He will say, "Hey, I looked at this week, and here's how I'm going to start doing it." And I'm like, "Sounds great to me, Dad." And he's worked really hard in his Excel system. He kind of took what I made, took it to a whole nother level. And then, at the college level, he does a lot of research. One of the ways we kind of have learned to play off of each other is I really prepare for the game as a whole, but do a lot of time studying the home team. And he does a lot of time studying the visiting team. And then he will also get some history on the school and when they were established and what their colors are and where they got their name and all of that. And so he'll kind of give a history lesson throughout the game. And then we talk about stats and give our analysis. And so it's been really fun. And I'm really blessed to be able to do that with him. And we've done women's basketball for a long time. And then over the last couple years, we were able to take the reins of football and also men's basketball. And then last season, I started calling some baseball and softball games. And I do softball by myself. We do men's, women's basketball, football, and baseball together. And then I also, for the first time ever, broadcasted soccer and volleyball last year at Maryville College as well. So a lot of sports, a lot of learning, but a whole lot of fun.
Wow.
So what I admire about you the most right there, Heath, what you just went over, you talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, is the prep work. There's so much prep work that we put in and you put in going into like a Friday night ball game. It just blows me away that, you know, at the college level with the Scots, how do you keep up with, how are you keeping up with, okay, you know, you got a couple sports that overlap, you know, this team is doing this in the recruiting, you know, and then this team is doing this. So how do you keep up with all these sports at the same time?
And it's tough. And I think, you know, at times it's just really trying to figure out my schedule and where I can fit what in. And, you know, I would be lying if I said the fall season's not exhausting at times, but the grind, if you will, is also worth it. And it's a lot of fun. And last year was unique because, like I was saying a moment ago, you know, after talking to Maryville College in the offseason leading into last year, school year, they said, hey, we want to cover more sports. And we're going to give you the opportunity to pick which ones you want to do. And then whatever you don't cover, we'll fill in the gaps. And so I had never broadcasted soccer before. I had never broadcasted volleyball before. Baseball and softball, I knew more about because of growing up playing it, but I still hadn't really truly broadcasted it before. I had done PA announcing for soccer, but that's a whole lot different. You're announcing the starting lineups, you announce who scores and who made the assist, and you keep up with the clock and start and stop it when you need to. But there's not really an analysis of the game as a PA announcer. And so truly understanding the game was something that was foreign to me, just kind of like the game of soccer is. And so, you know, one of the kind of funny ways I did it to really make it enjoyable for myself to learn the game, and I tell people this and they laugh, but it's true, is I started watching Ted Lasso leading into soccer season. And I thought, well, you know, I'm just curious, could I learn something from this? Maybe I can, maybe I can't, but let's just give it a shot because this will be a unique way to do it. It's a show about soccer. Maybe I'll learn a term or two that I can pick up and use in my broadcast. And what was cool is I kind of found myself, in a sense, relating to Ted, where this guy was a football guy. He had never really done soccer before. He's now taking over a team that he really doesn't understand the game, and he is learning as he goes. And so he's picking up phrases, he's picking up terms and different things that he's also learning just like me. And so I enjoyed that, and it was a really cool show, and I loved it. And I also, you know, talking about preparation for volleyball and soccer, I printed a glossary that I found online of just terms and their definitions and what they meant, and then maybe different formations and what those looked like, and trying to just better understand it, but also taking that packet with me to the game so that throughout the game, maybe I could find a word or two that I could just say, okay, these two words I really want to focus on tonight, and try to learn how to use them in my broadcast, and just take each week on a week-to-week basis and get better. And if I can use those 2 or 3 terms a few times, get comfortable with them, that'll start to, as Wayne talked about earlier, add to my tool belt of soccer. And then I'll try a couple other new terms. And eventually maybe I'm starting to use 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 terms in a game because I'm starting to really understand what they mean. And so I did that with those sports. Volleyball was a little bit easier because it's very fast paced. But soccer is a slower game, and it's just really kind of all about rhythm and finding those openings and taking advantage when you see them, and controlling the pace. And so it was a learning curve for me. But not only is the staff amazing at Maryville College, but the parents are as well. And so I had a few parents that were near me that found out it was my first year covering, and they came up during a halftime and just talked to me, spent some time with me, gave me some advice, told me different things they knew about soccer, and said if I needed anything, they were there for me. So, you know, I joked around last year. I coined the phrase, if you will, when I was in basketball season with Coach Placeris. I said, it means a lot to be a Scot. And I think for me, it's so true, because everything I've learned since being there is that it's just such a family. People love and care about each other and are truly invested in helping everyone elevate what they do.
You know, Ben, one thing that we haven't touched on, and I think this is big, is because at Maryville College, it is a video broadcast, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a big difference between a TV broadcaster or a video broadcaster and a radio broadcaster. So how was that, like learning that they can see it, Heath? That you don't have to tell them what color their jersey is, or different things, like just small pieces that when you're on the radio beat, you have to say, his jersey's dirty because he's been on the ground a lot tonight, or the flag's flying in a certain direction, or blah, 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 blah. You don't have to do that in the video side of things. Was there a transition where you kind of had to tune a little bit, and now is that a pretty seamless transition?
I would say it's constantly a work in progress. I think there's a lot of opportunity to continue to get better. I think for me, usually early on in a season, I have to remind myself that I'm not on the radio. But also at the same time, you're not always, I would say, at that level going to catch every angle with a camera. And so at times too, I can kind of use my skill set from the radio world and really be able to go into a description and be able to explain stuff. And we find other things we talk about too, like we talk about, maybe at the beginning of the game, like, hey, it's cool 78 degrees here as we're starting to kind of creep our way into the fall. The wind's got a slight breeze, pull into the right, like talking about some different things we're seeing with the weather, what we're seeing with the fans, and being able to describe those. And, there's also just human error sometimes where maybe a camera goes out, or maybe it doesn't go all the way covering the play. Maybe someone accidentally misses a step. We all make mistakes. And so there's been times where even, someone's not at the game and listening, that they maybe need that description. And I think a couple times too, I've talked to parents in different sports, that especially basketball, that sometimes will say, hey, we'll put it on our computer, or we'll put it on our TV and do stuff and listen. And so for me, I'm like, okay, well, now that I know that, I think that description is even more important. So I would say there was a huge drop off of what you described.
Sure.
I think, to a degree maybe, but I think as well that sometimes having that extra description can be beneficial.
Sure. So lost my train of thought like completely right there. Like it just went pew. I got it back. But so Heath, all of this, all of these projects, all of these sports, all of this activity and growth, you've managed to build a brand around it. It's on your T-shirt. It's Too Hype Sports. It's a brand that you kind of coined, I think, several years ago. I want to say on Facebook or something. I think it says, did you kick it off in 17?
I did. Yeah. 2017.
And so you've kind of built that. And honestly, over the last year and a half, 2 years, it's really kind of blown up just from being a Friday night and a retweet here or there kind of a system. Now, I remember, what was it, last year or 2 years ago, you did Trench Work Thursday, where you highlighted local kids on the offensive and defensive line across Blount County. You've been able to go to media days or press releases. I know you were at the presentation when Brian Nix was announced as the head coach at Alcoa, or at least I think maybe Marty was the contact there that day. But you've been at the basketball media days things and done interviews with individual players. Tell us a little bit about Too Hype, kind of what the concept was when it launched, and then kind of where we can find it and what it's doing these days.
Yeah. So, I couldn't have imagined when I originally started it that we'd be doing what we're doing today. When I initially started it, what my goal was for the parents or grandparents and relatives, maybe alumni and other just fans of the team of Alcoa football who couldn't come to the game, could kind of stay in the loop on how things were going on Friday nights. So it was really just more of a scoring update account. And I created it on Twitter and I created it on Facebook. And where it got its name was Alcoa has a chant before their games, kind of like if you've ever watched Remember the Titans and the chant they do. So I would say it's certainly similar. Alcoa has a chant before the game that's called Too Hype. And I just kind of took it from that and really more of like in honor of that, if you will, and decided to call it Too Hype Sports and focus on Alcoa and give scoring updates throughout the game. And that first year or two, that was really primarily the focus. And we would up the ante and try to do little things here and there with it for fun. But in the off season, I would see things like players retweeting or are tweeting out, maybe their scholarship offers or other things that they were doing and opportunities they were getting. And really, the more I watched that, the more I thought, man, these kids aren't getting the love they deserve and the praise for all of this hard work. And so I saw an opportunity, especially in Blount County, which is kind of a majority of my life. I've been living here and been a heritage kid. So I know what it's like to live in the county and maybe not get all the coverage, not get all the love. And so I saw it as something I could really be able to shine a light on. And one of the things with 2Hype that I wanted from that point on to really make a priority too is that a lot of sports media outlets tend to critique and tend to compare and do a lot of those things that can sometimes be negative and not great to some players and good to others, and can be maybe detrimental as well to these young kids. And that wasn't something I wanted to do. I heard a great quote recently, and this is not just something that can pertain to 2Hype, but I mean, it's something that pertains to my life when I kind of get in my head and think I'm not good enough or start comparing to other people. Is the quote was, "Comparison is the thief of joy," and I heard it on a ESPN show talking about the basketball greats, and they were going back and forth, and everyone was naming their favorite of all time, and they got to one guy, and he said, I believe that comparison is the thief of joy, that there's so much different things going on in these eras and styles that it's hard to truly say who's the best because there's so many factors. And I think, you can use that in your own life, that, we spend sometimes too much time in our heads thinking we're not good enough or this person's better or trying to be like someone else. And what happens is, we get depressed and we get down and maybe it slows us down from being who we're supposed to be and utilizing our strengths and capitalizing on what makes us unique. And if we realize that all it's doing is stealing our joy and instead be able to kind of lean into that happiness and who we are and what makes us great, we could do so much more. And so for 2Hype, that was kind of the point, is to be a positive platform that loves and appreciates and hypes, just like the name, our student athletes. And the ultimate goal is to get to a point in time where we are a premier source for sports in Blount County, where we're covering all the schools out here, including good old Greenback, that unfortunately I think kind of gets stuck in this world where, Loudon doesn't really claim them and are they in Blount County? But I've had people from around the area that when I first started doing stuff, asked for Greenback information, that I said, I'm not going to leave them out. Like, I'm going to bring them into the fold, and they've done stuff with Blount County anyway. So I believe they're part of the crew. And so I've been able to go to a couple different county games, each year, trying to get involved a little bit more and starting to get involved more with Alcoa sports as well. But it's grown to what it is today. And I hope that in the future, eventually I can bring some more people into the circle and be able to have more 2Hype members who can kind of help me cover these other schools and be kind of primary sources for each one under the 2Hype umbrella and really make sure that we are helping these kids, highlighting these kids. And the last thing I'll say about it, and I think that means the most to me, is seeing the impact that it has made on these young men and women. I've had kids from other counties reach out to me from time to time and say, "Hey, I'm posting this huddle video. Would you mind to retweet it? Would you mind to take a look at it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, like that takes no time at all. I'd love to help you." And so, I'll go watch their huddle video, and then I'll find something nice to say about what I saw and what my analysis was, and I'll quote tweet it, I'll say it, and I'll get it out. And over time, as our Alcoa athletes have been able to go on and graduate and do great things, there's been coaches and assistant coaches and recruiting coaches that have slowly started to follow our brand. So I believe that the more that happens and the more that I can highlight and hype these kids up, the more opportunities we're creating for our kids to be able to go on and do great things.
I don't know that I can add anything to that, Ben. I just think he's got a good thing going.
Well, I'll tell you guys, and this is, I don't like to talk about myself, but I definitely want to brag about both of you guys. And I don't want to brag so much because we got these small screens. I don't want your heads to get real big. But all
I got a
kidding
hat on
aside,
that'll hold mine in.
All kidding aside, Heath, you alluded to it earlier about, the Alcoa game and your passion, and you talked about that passion in that ball game, and I've had the pleasure of working with Wayne. I think if you're passionate in what you do, and it becomes part of you, it becomes part of you while you watch the ball game or while you are encouraging other kids in the area, I think you're going to be successful. I think if your heart's in it, and your emotions are in the ball game or in with that student athlete, only good things can happen. And both you guys do that. I'm not going to talk about myself, but both you guys do a really good job with that.
Ben sings. Ben is a vocal. He is a vocal promoter.
Now I will brag about my singing. Yes, I will.
we'll have to start a Too Hype and Grind choir in a minute, or start an a cappella group pretty soon. You better watch out.
Yeah. I start with Tracy Lawrence and I work back to Merle Haggard is what I do. Somewhere in there's Dwight Yoakam, but
if we start a singing group, I'll just run the sound. How about that?
I'll just run the sound. Well, man, I really do appreciate it. I really do appreciate the kind words. I think, kind of like I told you, I think it's easy. If I could, ever give anyone any advice, it would be like, it's important to stay humble and to continue to grind and work constantly to get better, because you're not perfect and no one is, but also sometimes give yourself a little bit of grace. And I think that's a hard thing. I'm very critical of myself. Even if someone tells me it's the greatest broadcast they've ever heard, I could probably tell you 10 to 20 things I know that I messed up on. And right. And so I think it's so nice to be able to meet the parents. After a ball game, or after, especially at Maryville College, we've been able to really get to meet some of these parents who typically live in another state and have come to a game or two to see their kid, but usually have to listen online. So they, unfortunately have to listen to me and my dad a whole lot, but make a bunch of dad jokes, go back and forth. But they come and they say, hey, this is our one weekend we get to be in town, and typically we're listening back at home, and we just want to tell you how much we appreciate you and what a great job you do. And I think it's nights like that I wouldn't say goes to my head. I think it's more of I walk out with my dad and I go, man, that was just so nice to hear. And, sure. and it means a lot. And so it's easy to think, we're not good enough at times, but I think we have to give ourselves some grace and kind of just find that middle ground, which can be hard at times. But it's been a lot of fun. And, I live in Alcoa now. Used to live a little bit closer to Foothills Mall, but now I live over here in Alcoa. And I just love the community. I love the people. And over the years, building those relationships, I can walk the streets down and someone may honk their horn, and wave at me, or I go down the street and someone's like, hey, Too Hype. And I kind of laugh and I'm like, hey, man, but I get to also see these kids grow up. We've got some kids now that are doing some big things at the collegiate level. And, we had one or two that recently transferred to other schools, and from time to time being able to reach out to them, or if I think one of them's maybe going through a tough time, I may just check on them, and I may just reach out and let them know that, like, hey, Too Hype's still here for you, and this is not just a platform to talk about your athleticism, but also a platform to let you know, like, you're loved and you're cared for, and this is a community that has your back.
Man, little look behind the curtain, Mr. Heath, and it's been a good one. A lot of stories. Like I said, I think everybody, they know you via Too Hype or through Maryville College. But sometimes how you get there is part of the reason why you are the way you are. And that seems to be the case here. So appreciate you sharing the stories. Again, Too Hype and Mr. Dunkel is always welcome on the grind. I may do a little, as the season progresses, maybe look at a little Maryville Alcoa preview, maybe bring you on that week. We'll just try to see how we can bring Too Hype and the grind together a little bit more from time to time.
Well, I definitely appreciate it, guys. Really an honor to be able to come on the show and share my story. Like you said, Wayne, typically it's not about us. We're broadcasting and hyping up these kids and these athletes, talking about them. And so not an opportunity that we do often, but it's truly appreciated. And I'm really humbled and honored by the fact that you guys thought of me.
Good deal. Ben, you got anything?
Heath, we appreciate you so much, man. Really enjoyed the conversation. And if you need any extension cord, we're not but a phone call away. We'll get you some.
Hey, that sounds good to me. We'll need to hang out before the Maryville Alcoa game, not just on game day, and just catch up,
right.
guys.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. But episode 22 has told you that it means a lot to be a Scot with Mr. Heath Dunkel, and appreciate it. Great story. If you like this episode, check out others. Again, episode 22, but we've talked to Charlie Paleo, to Derek Hunt, all the way through Tony Iruli, another Scot. And so there's a lot to be had if you like what you heard here tonight. You can check us out on YouTube, obviously, is where the channel is, but Facebook and Twitter as well. But that'll be all for tonight. But Heath, thanks again. For Ben Metz, Heath Dunkel, I'm Wayne Kaiser, and take care, be safe, and yes, grind on.